In August of 1982, farmhands were working at a Sears Road cornfield in rural Dixon, which is near the state capital of Sacramento, in Northern California. In the course of their daily work, the two men stumbled upon the body of a woman. They immediately notified police. An autopsy revealed that she had died of multiple gunshot wounds to both her head and neck. Police were unable to identify the woman as she did not carry any documentation. The woman was believed to be Caucasian, about 15 to 17 years of age, 5 foot 2 inches tall, and weighed about 115 pounds. She was given the name Dixon Jane Doe. She remained unidentified for more than a decade. Then in 1992, the National Missing Persons Unit contacted Dixon Coroner's office, leading investigators to discover the victim's true identity as 21-year-old Holly Ann Campiglia from New Jersey, originally from the East Coast. Holly Ann Campiglia was born to Augustine A. Campiglia and his wife Sally in Cherry Hill, Bergen County, New Jersey. While she was only in high school, Holly started taking drugs, and due to that, she began to have mental health issues. Holly had a history of running away from home. The first time she ran away was in 1977. She was found 1 month later, walking a mile away from the family home on Forest Hill Road, off of Springdale Road in Cherry Hill. Each time she would return, she showed a decreasing level of responsiveness to the medical treatment prescribed to her mental health issues. On June 10, 1980, Sally was taking her daughter to a counseling center when Holly jumped out of the car, never to be seen again. Her mother in an interview said, quote, "She said she wanted to get on with her life. I want to see the world and do things my way. I tried to pull her back, but the car was on Route 70 near the Sheridan Pass, and I couldn't hold on to her." Her parents contacted police and reported her missing. 1 month later, the family received a letter from Holly telling them not to think of her anymore. It was mailed from Sacramento, California, but the return address was not a real street. The family would not receive any updates from her. After that, the case would eventually go cold. In 1992, Holly's family realized that her name had been dropped from the missing persons database, which was used by law enforcement nationally. They contacted police, and her name was re-added to the database. A few weeks later, Solano County Police contacted Holly's parents and told them that Dixon Jane Doe, found in August of 1980, was actually Holly Ann, since her name had been accidentally removed from the missing persons database. They could not identify her at the time. Even though she was identified, police still had no suspects in her murder, and the case would again go cold. Then in 2021, Holly's family asked Solano County investigators if any advancements in DNA technology could be utilized to help solve her murder. The detectives submitted the evidence found at the crime scene for DNA analysis, and a male DNA profile was found. The DNA was then entered into several databases, and in late February of 2023, 76-year-old Herman Lee Hobbs was identified as the killer. Herman Lee Hobbs had an extensive, violent criminal history. At the age of 22, in 1969, Hobbs was suspected of committing over a dozen armed robberies in the Sacramento area. Following a reckless car pursuit with police, he confessed to being a serial robber and agreed to plead guilty. However, during his sentencing in court, he tried to flee and was tackled and subdued by a CHP officer. He was released from prison in 1975, where he later moved to Rio Linda. In 2000, Herman was convicted for assaulting a 15-year-old girl. While investigating Hobbs, police learned that he might be responsible for several other murders. In 2002, Hobbs was charged for the murder of 29-year-old Brenda Ann Tucker, who disappeared from her residence in Oroville in 1994. In 2001, loggers in Yuba County discovered her skull, which displayed remains of a bullet wound. A DNA analysis confirmed her identity. Given that Tucker's family knew Hobbs, he had sometimes been a house guest of theirs. In the 1990s, Hobbs was charged with her murder. However, due to lack of evidence, the charges were dropped. In January of 1975, 13-year-old Terry Potter had left her junior high school due to a headache. However, she never arrived home. 9 days later, her lifeless body was discovered inside a nearby drain pipe. She had been fatally stabbed. and evidence indicated she had been a victim of a sexual assault. In 2005, Hobbs was investigated for Terry's murder. DNA found at Terry's crime scene matched that of Hobbs. He pleaded no contest to Terry's murder and received another sentence of 25 years to life. Now 75, Hobbs is currently serving time for the previous 2 crimes. However, he is eligible for parole in December of 2025. In early March of 2023, he was finally charged with first-degree murder for the death of Ann Campiglia. The case was solved after more than 40 years. Pamela Lynn Conyers was a 16-year-old student from Anna, Rundle County in Maryland, attending Glen Burnie High School in 1970. She was known for her academic prowess, as well as her kindness. Her mother recalls her being excited for the upcoming pep rally being held at her school the evening of October 16th, after Pamela attended the homecoming bonfire and rally, where she by all accounts had an enjoyable time. She returned home. Her mother saw her putting the finishing touches on her outfit for the next night's homecoming dance. She needed some shoe dye, so she asked her mother for $5 and the keys to the family car, a 1967 Dodge Monaco. She then drove to the Herndale Mall, located on Twin Ridge Drive. Around 8:30 p.m. that evening, a shopkeeper at the mall recalls selling the dye to the girl. This would be the last reported sighting of Pamela. She was officially reported missing when she failed to return home later that night. Police searched inside as well as around the mall, but no one reported seeing anything suspicious. The next morning, a massive search for the girl was launched, using helicopters as well as scent-chasing dogs. Police suspected that Pamela had been kidnapped. 3 days later, a man walking in the woods found the family's car. The car had been abandoned in an overgrown patch of brush in the median strip on Route 100, approximately 100 yards away from the Mountain Road extension and near several deserted farm buildings. Police launched an extensive search of the wooded area. Soon the police found Pamela's body on her side. Not far from the car, police found tire tracks next to the body, indicating that she had been thrown out of a moving car. A forensic analysis of the tire tracks suggested that the car used to dump Pamela's body was her own. The car was abandoned 300 yards from her body. Discovered wearing pants and an inside-out pullover sweater. Her purse, underwear, and car keys were never located. Her cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation due to strangulation, and the manner of death was ruled a homicide. The abduction and murder of Pamela rocked her hometown of Millersville, which up until then had been a quiet and tight-knit Central Maryland community. The police aggressively investigated the case, assigning 4 full-time detectives to examine over 200 individuals. The 16-year-old's clothes, as well as evidence from the car, were collected and stored for future testing. The car had no fingerprints, as the killer had likely wiped them all off. The police had no leads nor suspects, and despite extensive community involvement, the case would eventually grow cold. Then in 2000, 23 detectives, with the help of genetic genealogy, created a DNA profile from the preserved evidence found at the 1970 crime scene. The DNA profile was entered into a publicly available genealogical database, and soon a match was found. Detectives then created a family tree, and a man named Forrest Clyde Williams III from Salem, Virginia, was identified as the killer, believed to have been born around 1950. The man, who would go on to claim the life of 16-year-old Pamela, was around 21 years of age at the time of the attack. Police do not believe Pamela knew William before her abduction and murder. Not much information has been released to the public as to how the attack happened. William graduated from nearby Northeast High School and then worked as a carpenter. He eventually moved to Virginia. Even though police were able to identify the killer, they could not charge him, as William had died in 2018 of natural causes, a luxury not afforded to 16-year-old Pamela. William had been arrested months after Pamela's murder. for drunken, disorderly offenses. However, he was never questioned. For the teenager's disappearance, police believe Pamela was kidnapped while she was leaving the mall and walked into her car in the parking lot. Police have not ruled out the possibility that another person or persons may have been involved in her murder. And while justice was unable to prevail, those who remember Pamela say that such information helps put to rest the copious questions they carried with them. Christina Castiglione was 19 years old and living with her mother and father in Redford, Michigan, a graduate of Redford Union High School. She participated in sports and had a long-term boyfriend. She was described as kind, friendly and cheerful, however not very outgoing. In 1983, she was employed by the Detroit Edison Company in the research department as a clerk and had reached out to an Army recruiter to look into enlisting on March 19, 1983. Christine had the day off and spent the morning with her boyfriend, running errands to help her mother. Her boyfriend left in the afternoon, telling her he would meet up later that evening. When 7:30 p.m. rolled around and she had not heard from her boyfriend, Christina decided to go out to look for him. She had just sold her car, a Mustang, so she went on foot. She went to her boyfriend's home, but his sister told her he was not there. She then walked to a friend's house a mile away on 5 Mile Road after discovering that her boyfriend was not at her friend's house either. Christina hung around and watched television with her friend for a while before leaving to go back home. She would never make it back home. Her parents reported her missing the next day. When she failed to return home, family and friends were questioned. Her boyfriend told police that he had seen Christina at around 7:30 p.m. standing on the roadside across from Kingsborough Party Store. He said he was returning from a party with 2 of his friends in a car at the time. He told police that he chose not to ask his friends to stop and pick his girlfriend up because he was aware that she did not approve of them. Instead, he claims he got out of the car at another store, located approximately 1 mile away. When his friends stopped to purchase beer, he then waited at that location for Christina to pass by when she failed to show up. He says he walked back to look for her. However, he was unable to find her. He then called her home several times, but no one answered despite his worry. He says he did not inform Christina's parents, as he did not want to distress them. Police would receive a tip that stated a woman matching Christina's description was seen being forced into a vehicle in Inkster, Michigan, while being partially or entirely undressed. Despite extensive searching, the police were unable to locate her. A psychic named Penny Mraz suggested to the police that Christina's body might be in a dumpster. In Inkster, the police conducted searches of trash containers for a few days, but nothing was found. 10 days later, on March 29, 1983, a man stumbled upon the body of Christina in the Oak Grove State Game Area on Fawcett Road in Deerfield Township. Her body was partially clothed and covered in snow. In a secluded area, it had snowed on the day Christina had been reported missing, suggesting to police that her body had been dumped. Shortly after she was seen in Bradford by her boyfriend, autopsy revealed that Christina had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death. Christina's boyfriends and his friends were suspected, but eventually cleared. Police believe Christina had been picked up by a random stranger who later assaulted and strangled her. The man who found Christina's body was also suspected due to inconsistencies in his statement. The man initially claimed that he stumbled upon the body after talking to a state worker about the best place to hunt for deer. Although he claimed he was there for hunting, he did not have a rifle. He claimed he spotted the body from a distance and did not approach within 100 feet of it. However, this turned out to be a lie. It was also revealed that the man's brother owned a property in the area where Christina had disappeared. Despite agreeing to take a lie detector test, the man failed to show up at the scheduled time. Police also said the man had lied several times during his questioning. However, there was no evidence linking him to the crime. and he had no prior criminal history, so police were unable to arrest him. 3 years later, the witness was involved in an accident that rendered him a paraplegic. Despite interviewing a number of suspects, no one was ever charged, and the case eventually grew cold. In the early DNA found at the crime scene was injured indicatus, but nothing would be found. In March of 2022, investigators received grant funding from Season of Justice, a non-profit organization that funds DNA testing on unsolved cold cases where the victim's body or the suspect is unidentified, and the DNA is the only investigative option. This funding enabled detectives to conduct advanced DNA testing on suspect DNA samples taken in 1983 and preserved. Forensic DNA evidence from the case was sent to Ortham Labs in May of 2022. Using forensic-grade genome sequencing, Ortham scientists were able to create a detailed genealogical profile of the unknown male suspect. Ortham's genealogical team produced investigative leads using the profile and passed them on to the Livingston County cold case team the lead helped. The team identified Charles David Shaw as the suspect, later confirmed by 3 separate familial DNA comparison tests. Unfortunately, Shaw had died in November of 1983, the same year the crime occurred. Shaw had lived less than 5 miles from where Christina went missing. He died in November of 1983 of accidental, erotic self-asphyxiation. While he will never be held accountable for the murder in a court of law, some say there is poetic justice in the way he died.